All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on one of history's most powerful and, let's be honest, most mysterious financial dynasties. We're going to go from a cramped German ghetto all the way to the gilded halls of European power. This is the real story of the House of Rothschild, an empire built on secrets, strategy, and just sheer, raw ambition.
You know, this quote right here, it just nails it. It really sets the stage for everything. It shows you the two core pillars of their entire empire. First, absolute family unity, and second, this unyielding, relentless drive for profit. And it was these two ideas working together that would let them outlast entire nations and empires.
So, where does a story like this even begin? Well, it's not in some grand palace. Nope. Our story starts in an 18th century Frankfurt ghetto with a man named Mayer Amschel Rothschild. His beginnings were about as humble as you can get, but his ambition? Oh, that was anything but. See, as a Jew in 18th century Frankfurt, Mayer was facing a massive wall of restrictions. He couldn't own a farm, he couldn't trade in silk or weapons. I mean, he was basically locked out of all the most prestigious businesses of the time. But here's the thing, those very limitations, they're what forced him to get creative and think in a way nobody else was. Mayer's brilliant move was a strategy we'd now call front-running. It's a classic example of what's called information arbitrage. It's simple, really. Having knowledge before anyone else gives you an edge that is almost impossible to beat. He figured out he could get ahead of huge transactions, especially in the rare gold coin business, and use that insider info for his own gain. So how did he pull it off? It's fascinating when you break it down. He was supposed to be acting as an agent for Prince William, right? His job was to buy gold. But before buying for the prince, he'd use borrowed money to snap up the coins for himself. Then he'd turn around and sell his own coins to the prince at a markup. Now here's the kicker. He wasn't just making his 8% commission, he was also pocketing the profit from the price difference. He literally got paid twice on one deal. It's absolutely genius. So once he built his fortune, Mayer's vision just exploded. It was no longer just about being the richest guy in Frankfurt. No, the goal was way bigger. It was about creating a dynasty that would dominate all of Europe. And you better believe he had the perfect plan to make it happen. To pull this off, he sent his 5 sons out like 5 arrows from a bow, each one aimed straight at a major European financial capital. Now, this wasn't just simple expansion. What he was really creating was a private, international intelligence and finance network. There was nothing else like it at the time. And of all the sons, you really have to look at Nathan. He was the one sent to London, and he was by far the most ruthlessly ambitious. He took his father's principles and just revolutionized the textile trade. He didn't just sell fabric, he built a system where he controlled everything, the raw material, the dyeing, and the manufacturing. He tripled his profits and could sell cheaper than anyone. He just completely undercut all his competitors. You see, the Rothschilds' real superpower wasn't just their money, it was information. We're talking about an age before telegraphs, before anything instant, and they built their own private communication network. We're talking riders, ships, even carrier pigeons that was faster than any government's. Imagine knowing the outcome of a battle hours or even days before anyone else. It made them unstoppable. This was basically the 18th century version of high-frequency trading. And this right here is the perfect example of their power. When the Duke of Wellington desperately needed gold to pay his army fighting Napoleon, who did he turn to? Nathan Rothschild. And Nathan didn't just supply the gold. That was the easy part. He engineered the entire, incredibly complex, cross-channel operation to actually get it there. That single deal cemented the Rothschilds as the financiers of nations. Okay, so the Napoleonic Wars end and the world starts changing fast. The dynasty knew it had to adapt or it was going to die. The whole war financing game was getting crowded and they needed a new edge.
It was James Rothschild over in Paris who saw what was coming next, and the future, as he saw it, ran on steel tracks. So the family pivoted. They poured their massive fortune into a brand new, burgeoning industry, railroads. Think about that shift. They weren't just financing governments anymore. They were literally building the infrastructure of the modern world.
So with their economic power totally secure, what's next? Political influence. Nathan's son Lionel fought for over a decade to take his elected seat in the British Parliament. Why? Because he famously refused to swear the required oath on a Christian Bible. When he finally won, it was this landmark moment. It broke down massive barriers and moved the family's power directly from the bank into the halls of government. For almost 100 years, the Rothschilds pretty much reigned supreme. No one could touch them. But then, across the Atlantic, a new American banking empire started rising up. And this one was ready to challenge their dominance. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870, this was the ultimate showdown. The Rothschilds, with a century of experience, looked at the situation and decided France was a bad bet. They refused to finance them. But Junius Morgan, this bold American banker, he saw it completely differently. He gambled. He bet that France's economy was tough enough to repay its debts, win or lose. He raised the money, France paid it back, and just like that, the House of Morgan was catapulted onto the world stage. But the old guard wasn't finished, not by a long shot. During the American Panic of 1893, when the U.S. government was literally on the verge of running out of gold, it was J.P. Morgan who had to call the Rothschilds for help. And did they deliver? They came through with an astounding 3.5 million ounces of gold to save the U.S. Treasury. And get this, the power of that combined brand, Morgan and Rothschild, was so massive that the government bonds they issued to back the deal sold out to the public in just 30 minutes. 30 minutes! It was just a stunning, jaw-dropping display of financial might. Now, the 20th century, it would bring challenges that were just unprecedented, things that threatened to tear the family and its entire empire apart, from world wars to internal fights and public scandal. Yeah, the new century brought a whole new set of trials. World War I saw family members on opposite sides of a war for the very first time. Then World War II brought Nazi persecution, the seizure of their assets, and forced them into exile. Much later, in the 90s, the Robert Maxwell scandal really tarnished their carefully guarded reputation for discretion. And yet, through all of that, they adapted. They evolved into the diversified, global financial group they are today. And it's so important to understand that the biggest threats weren't always from the outside. In the 1980s, a huge battle raged inside the family. It was between Jacob Rothschild, who argued they had to modernize, and his cousin Evelyn, who championed the traditional model of absolute family control. It was that age-old tension, tradition versus progress, playing out right inside the dynasty itself. The story of the Rothschilds, all the way from a Frankfurt ghetto to a global dynasty, it just raises this massive question. What makes a legacy truly last? Is it just ruthless ambition? Is it brilliant strategic adaptation? Or is it those unbreakable family bonds? Maybe it's a delicate and often really difficult combination of all three. In a world like ours, a world defined by constant change, their story really forces us to ask what it truly takes for any legacy to endure.